I'll just kick off quickly with we sent an announcement yesterday regarding merch, so really excited. That's going out next Friday, or will go live next Friday. But some of you may have seen we're doing a bit of a giveaway. So we're going to give away 5 merch packs with one of each item, obviously in your size, and we'll get your details afterwards. But the only means to enter is to possess a coveted Badger POAP. So finally, we're adding some great value to these, and hope to do more with it in the future. But as part of that, today is an eligible POAP. We also have Dig Dojo next Tuesday before the contest closes on Tuesday night. So still time to enter. Again, only one, but a full merch pack is pretty exciting, and you get to hang out with us at our events. So just wanted to say that. I think Tom's will handle the POAPs today, so send him a message afterwards with just proof of attendance. And it may take a minute just to add this event, this new POAP to the raffle. So there may be just a delay, but nonetheless, if you check in later, you should be able to enter with this POAP. And that's it for me.
Yeah, Tom, I don't know if we're seeing the chat. Do you send a screenshot via DM and get pro? Okay, cool. So if you check the chat, Tom Xerox in there. So DM him with a screenshot of yourself in the chat, and he'll hook you up. So go get those sweet POAPs. Cool. Well, thanks for setting up, Will. I guess a little maintenance stuff. So we're moving to we've been doing this every other week. I think we missed or we recycled. We missed a week or whatever, so we're on a different schedule now. But I think what we're going to do going forward, we just moved the Badgers Never Hide, the Twitter Friday thing to every other week. So I think we're going to have it. 1 week we'll do office hours. Next week we'll do the Badgers Never Hide on Friday. That one's more completely open-ended updates, things like that. This will be more topic specific as usual. So that's kind of the cadence for going forward for as long as that goes until we change it again. But just a little FYI there. For those that haven't been here before for office hours, general structure, it's a topic. I'll go through it, give kind of the rundown on how we're approaching it, where we are, status, yada, yada, yada. That's 20, 30 minutes or so, hopefully closer to the 20 side. Anyone else from the team, Tritium hopped up, which is great. So get people to weigh in there, and then open to questions, prioritize questions on the topic. So either put your hand up, pop up here, chat about it. Happy to talk directly to anybody. If you don't want to, ask verbally, feel free to throw it in the office hours discussion chat in the Discord. A couple things above this. And I'll just kind of run through those. I'll read out the questions and address them. And then once we kind of get through all the questions about the topic, we allot basically an hour for this. And then any time left at the end, we can talk about whatever people want. You can pop up to chat about things, throw it in the chat. Any questions, Badger or not Badger related, we'll take care of them. So that's the general structure. Today, we are talking about Convex staking and how that affects the current helper vaults that we have in Badger. So I'll give a little context around the helper vaults and kind of where this topic even came from. So I don't even know how long ago it was now. It could have been 1 month, could have been 5 months. I really don't know the way the time flows around here. But we instituted when we shifted all of the strategies to be convex focused strategies and really increased the yield, and kind of went on this whole kind of partner strategy approach with Convex. The way that we handled all the Convex that we received, since you stake your Convex, you have your the Bitcoin assets that you put into the curve vaults, and you take those curve vaults and you stake them in Convex, and you're earning Convex and curve. And the question was, okay, how do we deal with all this Convex and curve that we're going? So that's when we created the helper vaults that so you can stake that Convex and curve to even earn more yield. So we didn't want to have the users, everybody to feel like they have to go and claim all the time, because that just eats a lot of gas. So they claim and then stake, and they're leaving yield on the table. It's like, all right, how do we address that? So we take care of that for everybody. And we try to, we put in place like the optimal strategy for what you would do with Convex and Curve tokens as you receive them, which is basically just rolling them back into staking in Convex. And you can stake Convex in Convex, and then you can stake Curve in Convex, and then those generate even more yield. And then we fully auto compound those back into the vault. So the nice thing is you can keep earning the BCVX, which is the Badger Convex vault token, and then that in the background is just earning you more and more CVX, taking all the rewards, rolling them back into CVX, staking them in the platform, and you just get yield increases and increases, and it's great. You don't have to claim it. You don't feel like you're missing out on Convex yield because you're not staking and sitting in Convex in your claim. So that was the strategy. It's been working great in our opinion, I guess. I think people are generally pretty happy with it. But then we got thrown a bit of a curveball, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago when Convex released their kind of next phase of their token mechanics. So previously, the Convex token hadn't really done much. It was being distributed to everybody, but there was no real tie to the distribution of Convex or anything like that. So when we said that we had a lot of kind of vote weight or things like that with Convex, it was really just social, meaning that they knew that we had a whole bunch of Bitcoin that was in the Convex vaults because of our strategies that were putting them in there, and they knew that we weren't selling. We were basically locked into only selling like 20% of the Convex that they were distributing. So Convex liked that. And then they were like, okay, well, great. We'll now direct more of the Convex towards you guys because there's a lot of assets in the vaults coming from you, and you're doing things that are supportive of the token. But now they're moving towards more of a decentralized structure, or just more programmatic structure, similar to Curve, where on Curve, Curve's team's opinion, well, it doesn't matter, but it matters in that they control a lot of Curve, I guess. But it's more functional in that if someone did have a bunch of Curve, they can basically direct the emissions wherever they want. And there's nothing anyone can do to stop that. Curve team's opinion doesn't really matter. And like I said, their opinion matters in that they can influence where good chunks of Curve are kind of directed. So it's going to be the similar thing with Convex. So we're in a good state with them with social influence, where they like us, we like them. It's been a good, this whole partnership approach has been very positive for all involved. But now there's going to be a more programmatic component where, okay, we have to have the influence because they're going to move to a structure very similar to Curve, where you lock up Convex tokens into a VE Curve-like vault, which basically means that you choose your staking duration. And this is the part I'll admit I'm a little fuzzy on, is the exact function on the Convex side. But basically what it comes down to is the max that you can lock Convex tokens is, I believe, 16 weeks. On Curve, it's actually like 4 years you can lock these up. And then when you do that, you get increased rewards. So you get where you could be getting, I think it's where you get like 5% of the Convex. You get like 5% yield on staked Convex. When you stake it, you're going to get 6%. So looking at that, if we were to just leave the Badger vaults as is, we would only be getting 5%. We'd be leaving 1% or actually 20% of returns. We could get a 20% increase in returns by going to staking, by actually staking a chunk of that Convex. And that can make a big difference over a long time period, and a big difference for all the users, because that's where a good chunk of the yield is coming from, these Convex tokens. So that was announced. Okay, how do we address this? And what we've kind of done by creating these helper vaults is, even outside of the Badger ecosystem, can we create something that is like the optimal automated strategy for anyone that has Convex tokens? Because we want as much Convex in Badger as possible, because we can use that for our voting. So anything that's in that vault, we can use that to vote for more of the emissions to go to Bitcoin native or any asset pair or pool that Convex has on its platform, we can direct more of the yield that way because it's a competition. So it's a mutually exclusive thing. The more Convex you control, the more yield you can direct towards things that you want it to go to. And there's only going to be a fixed amount of Convex at any given time going across all the vaults. So it's kind of like we have to compete to get more of that influence to keep it directed towards Bitcoin to bring the best yield to Bitcoin. That's our whole shtick, right? So we want people to bring their Convex and put it in Badger, even if they don't care about Bitcoin or they don't care about Badger. So how can we make it the optimal strategy for folks to just say, hey, I can go over here, I can deposit it, set it, forget it, and I know I'm getting a good, it's being handled well. So with that, we're like, okay, well, we can't leave this 1%, this extra 1% or really a 20% increase in yield sitting on the table. How do we address it? So that comes down to, I guess, the meat of what we're doing. So the approach that we're taking is looking to actually have kind of a dual vault structure. So you're going to still have one thing to deposit, and the base asset for the vault is going to be the BCVX, similar to what it is now, where it's just regular staking, not locked. But then we're going to have the vault have another strategy where it's going to be actually locking the CVX. Now this poses a number of problems because once you're locking it, you can't unlock it for 16 weeks. So obviously, if any of it's locked in there and everyone decides that they want to withdraw all at the same time, there are not going to be funds available. So like, how do we handle that? And obviously we'll have to address some UI, not issues, but some components with the UI. We'll have to make it very clear, like, okay, there's, you can withdraw this much, you can't withdraw this much. But then we also need to just how can we make it programmatic so we're not, okay, people want to withdraw, we need to unlock some, it's going to be available in 4 weeks, and then some more people deposit, more people want to withdraw. Like how do we balance all of that? So the approach that we're looking at now, and it's kind of in its infancy, but I think we're fairly aligned. And Poe and Alex, who are in here, have been working on this a lot. And Alex has kind of been building out the locking strategy, and I think he's got the actual, we'll call it the VE CVX, is what you get when you actually lock the CVX. So he's got that component basically built, and now we're looking at kind of this rebalancing and the locking strategy component of it. So the way that we're looking at it is, and we'll just time box it a little bit, and I think the way we're going to look at it is we'll have to run basically rebalancing on some schedule. So let's say we run it weekly, because I think with any of these vaults, any action that we're taking, like, it takes gas, and we need it to be somewhat profitable for all those involved. So let's say we're going to do a weekly rebalance, and when you're looking at the vault, it's going to be split between BCVX, which is liquid, and then BVECVX, which is not liquid. So you basically have a vault that holds two different kind of vault tokens. And at any time, people can come and withdraw into BCVX from that. Or maybe we'll have some, you could zap in and out of it to directly to CVX. That's more relevant, but we'll just say it's BCVX for now. So you can deposit BCVX to get a position in the vault. When you withdraw, you'll get BCVX. Now, what we'll have is a target ratio. So let's just say it's 50% now. So dollar for dollar needs to be half BCVX, half BVECVX. And BVECVX should grow gradually in ratio compared to BCVX. So, the actual numbers will be a little different, but, to start, it'll be fairly equivalent. So we'll have that be 50%, and then we'll have thresholds on either side of it. So if we always want to have 50% locked. But now let's say a bunch of people deposit BCVX, we're not going to be auto locking all of it on every deposit or every harvest or anything like that. Like that's just a lot of uh, activity that's, cost gas. It can be, people might deposit and someone else might withdraw right after. So you don't want to be, being too, being too responsive in that manner. So we'll set some interval. It could be daily, it could be every other day, it could be weekly. We'll have to kind of model that out a bit and say, okay, then we're gonna have a lower and a higher bound. So let's say the lower threshold is 30%. So more people deposit, and we get to a point where when the rebalancer runs and checks, we only have 25% locked. At that point, then we would lock another 25% to get back up to 50%. And that would just kind of run that way, and that's fairly easy. Now, the trickier bit is on the other side, where people start withdrawing, and then all of a sudden we have 65% or 70% that's locked, and we need to get back to 50%. So let's say the threshold's 70%. So we get to 75% locked because people withdrew, run the rebalance, we're at 75%. It'll actually trigger the unlocking. Now, the unlocking takes 16 weeks. So it's not like we just hit unlock and then people can withdraw. So there's still a 30% runway where people can still continue to withdraw during that period. But to kind of phase things out, because once it triggers, it's on its way. So we don't necessarily want to just consider it fully locked. So what I'm looking at is, and all of this needs to be kind of parameterized so we can make it run in a fairly automated manner. So what I'm thinking now is we have a pretty set ratio. Let's say it's 50%. So once you unlock, you count 50% of what's unlocked so 50% of what was previously locked as unlocked. And then you scale out the rest of that fairly linearly over the next 16 weeks. So what that does is it means that next time the rebalancer runs and checks, let's assume no one deposits and no one withdraws, half of that component is half that plus, let's say it runs weekly and then 16 weeks, so 1/16. So it would be 50% plus 1/16 of the second 50% is now counted towards unlock. And that means that you should be back under the ratio and we're not going to run the rebalancer again. Now, during this period, if people are still trying to withdraw, we could get to a point where, people can't withdraw. Now, ideally, ideally that doesn't happen, but that's kind of the risk and, the trade-off that we're going to have to get. You're going to get higher yield, but if there's kind of a run on the vault for people withdrawing, we might get to a point where it's difficult for people to withdraw. And then we can tweak these parameters where maybe it's a wider bound on the lower end and a tighter bound on the higher end. So we're triggering more unlocks. But I think what this does is allows it to hopefully if we ever run into a situation where people can't withdraw, it's pretty close to when more locked funds are going to be actually unlocked, because there's, like I said, in 16 weeks it'll be there, and ideally more people come and deposit and the ratios balance out. But that's kind of what we're thinking, because we don't want to have it run too often. We don't want it to be too gas inefficient. We want to be as reasonably liquid as possible. It's really kind of a balance of like, okay, we could have it be maximally liquid for people to move in and out of, but then it's a trade-off of not having as much yield because we can't have it as much locked at any given time. So I think we'll start with fairly conservative parameters, and then with the goal of kind of stepping them up over time after we get some data around how it's performing, to hopefully be more and more a higher and higher locked percentage, so that we can get higher and higher yield in it. So that's the general structure of what we're thinking. I know it's kind of hard maybe without a visual, and it's a lot to kind of consume verbally, but happy to answer any questions around it. TLDR, we want it to be the best place to put your set it and forget it and put your Convex. things will run, there's ideally, especially for everyday users, not whales, like you should be able to get in and out. I mean, anyone can get in whenever they want. You should be able to get out probably whenever you want. If you have a smaller amount, if you have a much larger amount, you might have to be more strategic about when you process those withdrawals. And then, there's going to be a UI component that's completely new, that's kind of tricky, and we're really going to have to kind of figure it out. We'll probably start fairly basic and then, see from there. So yeah, happy to answer any questions around, Convex vault staking. Feel free to toss it in the discussion channel if you want, or throw your hand up and pop up here. I guess while I wait for questions, Tritium, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add on to that.
Hello, I had to find the mute button. No, I think that, to me, it's also hard to put my head around. I think maybe we should take some time in the next week and like work with maybe some of the analytics guys and see if we can figure out how to get like good flows mapped out and start to like model this all out. But yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's excited to do it. It's always fun working on new kind of vault strategies. This is definitely a big kind of step into the unknown, working with locks.
Well, DeFi is just like changing so fast. If you think about it, it's like 3 months ago, it was like, okay, we've got our Uni V2 vaults and we're kind of like farming a little bit of curve. And like almost everything was kind of like this, I don't know, like shitcoin alpha in a certain extent, right? And now like, with things like TriCrypto and Uni V3 and all of these new locking mechanisms and like these more layers on top of layers, like all of these like shitcoins are starting to actually become like functional economies, right? And then like the whole like farming exercise is kind of moving we're I think leading, but I think everybody's in the same position where it's like, well, like we can't just farm and dump anymore. It's I was actually talking to somebody at Harvest and they were like talking about vaults and stuff, actually with Poopster about it. And it's like, now we're at a point where actually allowing other people to farm us, right? With Boost and everything going on, like we're actually at a point also where we can be used as a compostable piece in the ecosystem, right? And have other people like playing with our economics. And I don't know, it's just cool. I just have to be excited for a minute.
Yeah, no, it is cool. And it's like, like you said, there's projects launch and you never really know, like, is this going to be a thing? Is the token going to be useful? Like, it was all kind of social, and we kind of went all in on Convex, and I think it's largely because the Curve team and Convex team are very close. That we felt kind of comfortable doing that. But yeah, it's like you're just hanging out, and then all of a sudden, like a Medium article drops, and you're like, well, all right, guess this is on the roadmap.
Yeah, but like, 6 months ago, those Medium articles weren't as like drastic, right? It was like, oh, okay, like I added 2 lines of code to like this thing that everybody already knows. Whereas like in the last 3 to 6 months, there's like real innovation that's really starting to roll out. And I think like over the next 6 months, like everything's going to change based on it, right? And I just think it's great that we're really at the front of that, right? And trying to understand it and not ending up in a situation where like everything stops working and we're like, oh, fuck, what happened?
Yeah, exactly. Will, I think Prince Talk has his hand up, maybe? I don't think I have.
I'll bring him up.
Right, there we go. Prince, what's up, buddy?
And sorry, I'm at the bank doing some TradFi stuff, so excuse if there's noise in the background. But I just had a quick question. Is there any consideration to 2 different vaults? One that's perpetually locking, perhaps with a withdrawal, another that is purely liquid. I understand the ability wanting to be able to trade it in and out of the vault, but we're talking about essentially, giving up half of the 20% increase in yield from locking. And I know for me, I'm not sure I would want to make that trade-off specifically for that vault. So just wanted to see if there was any thoughts on perhaps 2 different sets, one with a lock and maybe some kind of withdrawal requirement, another that's kind of as the current vault exists. I think that's my only question.
Cool. Yeah, no. So the BCVX vault will still exist because it'll be kind of a part of this new vault. Now, the question is it still incentivized? Where does it fit? Is it still available on the front end? Totally open to having that discussion. And I guess we'll probably move this. I guess we'll maybe light up an RFF on some of the, now that we have the model kind of figured out on some of the parameters and other components like this. Because on launch, we're going to have to figure out like, okay, now we have, technically this vault that's, two different strategies within the vault that either one could be surfaced to folks to deal with directly, but we also don't want to have like too many choices. So I think it's definitely a very valid question and something we should talk about leading into the launch. So keep an eye out for the channel and definitely weigh in when that happens. So I can definitely see the benefit, but I think there's also good voting benefits to having we need the locked components for the voting. I think that's the biggest thing. So I think for Badger as a whole, we'll really want to optimize for incentivizing people to be in the locked one. However we do that, whether it's inclusion in boost or just the amount of rewards that we're going in there. Other things that we've kind of thought about, and be interested to hear if anyone wants to chat about these, is kind of possibly dynamic fees, because if you're withdrawing and you're starting to kind of draw down a lot of the available liquidity in the vault, no one has a set opinion on it really on the team, but something we've discussed is like, would dynamic fees, if feasible, be something that would be beneficial, where even if it's not all going to the DAO, but part of it possibly going back into the vault to reward those that are not withdrawing. So people are kind of withdrawing up until maybe the 80% range, or 80% blocked, and they're in that last 20% or 10% of the available liquidity. If you're withdrawing in that range, your fee could be increased as a deterrent from withdrawing. Now there's a whole other UI component to that. There's a technical component to that. But I don't know, I'd be interested to hear if anyone has a strong opinion on if that would be a good, what's the opposite of incentive, I guess.
I like it. I don't know. I think like the choice to lock your token into something that you're not really locking into because you can withdraw anytime, right? Like if you're choosing to pull out quickly and not based on market conditions, right, paying more of a fee for those who are being more conscious about it makes good sense, I think.
Yeah, I'm kind of down with it too. I know Poe wasn't the biggest fan, but I think from the Convex end, they would probably like it as well, because it's like we're for people to get access to anything that they can actually sell in the market, they have to withdraw the BCVX and withdraw from that. But if they have to pay a higher fee to get out, then they're likely going to sit in it.
And it like creates a vault where long-term Convex holders, right, can put their Convex and have some liquidity, but also like if they stay for a long time, they're getting all of the benefits of locking plus the benefits of people that are like trying to be on the fence, right? So I think a lot of what we're doing is like trying to offer better rewards than you'd get somewhere else by taxing people for a certain sort of behavior. And I think that's cool stuff to do.
Yeah, I'm with you. So Neko, you asked, would a BCVX, CVX LP make sense? It's definitely something we've discussed, and we kind of talk about these with a lot of our Vault tokens, especially when there's situations where we need to be, actively in the strategy, locking, unlocking, things like that. It comes down to like anytime you're going to do an LP, like you need to actually then incentivize it, and maybe we try to get it on curve, and then we have to use like voting power to try to get curve rewards, because people aren't going to necessarily put liquidity in there just out of the goodness of their hearts. And then if they're now splitting whatever auto compounding you're getting from BCVX, you're kind of splitting that in half for your like net yield. So since BCVX and CVX are pretty like you can redeem one into the other very whenever you want. There's no limitations there. I don't think that's anything that we would incentivize. Now, if it comes to the point where it's going to be more gas efficient or whatever to do that on the harvest, to trade it instead of deposit withdraw, that's a possibility. But I don't think it's anything that we're going to necessarily do out of the gate. But like I said, it's not all of these components are settled by any means.
Yeah, I mean the BCVX CVX LP is particularly tricky, right? Because then the CVX, the treasury could do it, right? But then the CVX that's sitting there, we're not getting any productive use out of. And then fundamentally, like right now we're charging a 0.1% fee. So we could do BCVX, CVX LP at like 0.3%. And I guess we'd like make a little money, but it would cost more for our users. Or we could do it at like 0.5% or 0.05% on Uniswap, right? V3, but then, or Curve or something, right? But then again, like we're just allocating a bunch of CVX that isn't at work. And fundamentally, like it costs the same to just withdraw from the set. And so it just seems not efficient. There's other places like, for example, with this RARI liquidation thing where like Badger LP, we've got tons of Badger in the treasury, right? Like we're not putting it to work. So like that makes more sense. But I think when we can use the tokens, then we're like missing out on the utility when we do that.
Yeah, I agreed. I think the bigger thing is less even the yield, but like you said, the governance component. Because if we can, I would much rather throw a little extra Badger at people or include it in Boost or do something for them putting assets into the CVX vault that has the locking, because that gives us the vote weight. That gives us like the real valuable thing. Where if we were to do with the LP, then people are still quote unquote putting their CVX in Badger, because they're whether you're putting just the CVX side or the BCVX side, you still have exposure to that asset if anything happens to it or whatever. It's still like Badger associated. And if you're already kind of getting over that hump, we would much rather have you give the vote weight to Badger. So if it's something where it's people are worried about the withdrawal fee, and I think we're looking at having pretty low fees on these things. We need to cover the gas, obviously, but I don't think it's something we're trying to make a lot of money on for the DAO. It's more, let's get that vote weight and get it locked in. Yeah, and I think Neko, if there were to be more ecosystem kind of tokens, like I think it'd almost be more interesting as like let's say Urine does a CVX, block token, or some other project does it, and there's like 3 or 4 or 5 of them out there. If we could do a balancer pool or a curve pool with all of them in CVX, like okay, maybe that would make more sense. But yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I guess we could do BVE CVX, BCVX, and CVX all together, so you could have only like 20% CVX or something like that in there. But yeah, we'll have to figure it out. I mean, like I said, this is implementation question, and by us launching the vault, that doesn't make it a thing that we can't do in the future, right?
Yeah, I think the thing about LPing, right, is like as long as you can redeem, then the only thing that LPing is doing is circumventing redemption, right? And then the fees that we would charge for whatever the withdrawal or redemption are instead are being shared with the LP, which then if the treasury makes up most of the LP, like it's kind of the same in a sense, but in one sense we have more control and we're not like paying fees to an AMM, right? So where it gets more interesting is when maybe you can't always redeem, right? So for example, BVE CVX, if we were more aggressive with it so that there would be times when it would be harder to withdraw, then there could be a secondary market which would be similar to the fees that Janto was talking about, except for that then it would be more at a market level, right? So I do think, an alternative to the dynamic fees, John, would be BVE CVX, some LP with BVE CVX so that there could be a discount. But unless there's some limitation on redemption, like the LP doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I guess that is interesting, because as people exit using the LP, there will become a premium on, you can deposit BVE CVX and get an extra like 1% or something like that. Like,
right.
When Kurt starts approaching those limits, and that would incentivize people to mint some more of that and then deposit. So that could be interesting.
I mean, our strategies use that, right? So like Convex has a CVX, CRV Uniswap pool, right? And there's always a discount because there's no way to get back. And actually all of our strategies, instead of depositing in, we swap and buy out of that pool, and we always get an extra % or 2 out of it, right? And so that does allow the market to work.
Yeah, and to give people a little idea about where we are in this whole process. I mean, this kind of rebalancing strategy behind like what BVE CVX, that actual vault, and what it does in getting a whole mental map of something that is actually, functional and I think addresses most of the open questions. Like we kind of came to team agreement on that like yesterday. So it's, well, we need to figure out, we'll have that. Now we can, okay, well, we're going to continue building that out. And then we'll start now thinking about some of these other components of how does it fit in the ecosystem? Do we need LP out there? Is it a better thing to have? Like I said, maybe we'll get the RFF. I think we need to close a couple RFF channels, hopefully, and then light this one up, maybe, next week to start getting, community feedback on the overall structure and, how we, the actual implementation, deployment, are we going to incentivize it? Do we need LP? Let's get some actual visuals together and, hope, fingers crossed, hopefully Discord adds screen share to the stages at some point. So I think that would really add a little extra flavor to these things. But, we can share those in those channels and get community feedback on all these different these are great ideas, good things to think through. It's just, we got to, take it all into account. Cassius Crypto in the chat asked if we see much CVX and CVX curve you're attracting from non-Badger dig holders. So basically, people who are not in Badger and dig coming in natively. Good question. I don't think we've done that analysis. Tritium, I don't know. I know you've talked to a lot of Convex folks. Do you have any like anecdotal thoughts on what kind of non-Badger deposits we've seen in the helper vaults?
Like we've had a few users from the Convex community that were really interested in our vaults. Actually, over the last week, like the yields haven't been great. And so like they're kind of shaky at the moment. I have no idea how much it is. I mean, I have had, what's interesting about the Convex people is they really want CVX, right? So like a bunch of them have requested and said that they would put a bunch of capital into a helper vault that took CRV and compounded it into like BCVX, right? Or something in that direction. So anecdotally, what I'll say is that the Convex people, if you go on the Convex Discord, like we are the only auto compounding vault for CVX, and that's cool for them. And they're constantly telling Convex to do it. And they're like, no, we'll let other people do it. So like we are kind of in a lead position there. And I think like the more that those vaults are working well and we market them, there's an opportunity to capture that. And I also think like if we want to take the time to listen to what those people want and maybe build some new vaults or change our helper vaults around a little, there could be more to capture. But it's also a really good point. I'll see if I can find one of our analytics guys to just look at like deposits and withdrawals, I guess particularly like deposits into the sets from that didn't come from the strategies, and just see if we can get some statistics there, because that's interesting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting for at the time of deposit, if they held no Badger, I guess would be, and had no Badger deposits.
No, to me, it's just like, did the Convex, did the deposit come from one of our strategies, and then was it emitted, or did somebody just go and deposit, like a Convex token into our vault, right? Simple. And then we could maybe have, if you want to write me and come up with some more questions, John, we can like pop that out and we'll get a report out. It's a good question.
Cool. Yeah, and Cassius, slam some questions in there. If there's some data points you would like to see. Would love if anyone here is a Convex first person, whether or not you got into Badger and have been playing around a little bit more, or if you're just Convex and Badger curious. Would love to hear your opinion on like what would you like to see in a vault that would attract you and say, hey, I'm going to go over to, whether or not I'm going to do anything else at Badger, I'm going to go put my Convex in there. Is this model as enough? Andros 26, perfect. Feel free to put your hand up and come up and talk if you want. If not, you can talk in the chat. But it would be interesting to hear we'll put this model in place that's hopefully just on the surface the most optimal way we can have an automated vault run, in our opinion, on top of Convex, even taking any Badger component out of it, then see how we can work it into the Badger ecosystem to have some additional benefits to it. Anything else, like, is there, standalone sounds great, or I do it if there's extra couple percent on top, yada, yada, yada.
The one thing that I've heard from like Austin James, I know, who's not here, and maybe a few others, is again, they would rather and maybe Curve doesn't like this so much, but they would rather the Curve helper vault emit Convex tokens, right? Like everybody wants Convex tokens. Or even they would put curve into a vault that we built that maybe wasn't auto compounded into that did that. So I've heard some interest in that vault, right? You take B or convex CVE, CVX CRV, and you emit auto compounding convex. That's interesting to people.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know how we would go about that. And to let people know, like the way that we have this set up right now is there's, basically a convex vault and there's a curve vault, because when you're staking things in convex, you earn both convex token, but then you also earn the curve token that's being emitted because you deposit in convex deposits into curve emits those deposits, and it flows all the way back through. The balance that we have right now is in the convex vault, any curve that it's being emitted, we sell for convex and we roll that back in. And then in the curve vault, any convex that's being emitted, we sell for curve and roll that back in. We're auto.
Well, there's also these dollars, right? So in the curve vault, you have the 3 curve, you've got the convex, and you've got the curve, right?
Yep.
And so fundamentally, we're selling 2/3 of the emissions that aren't curve tokens there for more curve tokens. And maybe even, like, I don't know, maybe it's just confusing, but I think, and maybe it's a question for people here, that people would rather us like emit the convex, buy convex with the dollars, and then if we don't want to sell the curve, right, like increase the PPFS a little bit with the curve tokens. But I think, like, fundamentally from where most of the people are sitting, that would be more interesting, although harder to communicate to like users that aren't thinking a lot about it.
Yeah, well, and the thing is with these helper vaults, like, because we emit them, we need them to be fully auto compounding. I think it makes it a lot less complicated to be fully auto compounding.
It is fully auto compounding, right? So even if you're emitting,
if you have the curve vault now
emitting
CVX, like now it's not auto compounding, right?
Well, but BCVX is auto compounding. So as long as we're emitting another auto compounding token, then everything is always auto compounding, right? You don't actually have to claim to get more compounding.
But at that time, the BCVX curve vault is not auto compounding. If you start emitting VX,
it is by 1/3, right? So the curve that you get,
there's a big difference because how we're using these things about them being, they need to kind of be 100% auto compounding.
Yeah, well, I don't understand why, but anyway, like, yeah, we can talk about that later. But that would be interesting, I think. I maybe other people can confirm or deny that.
Yeah, like, I'm sure, just like anything, I'm sure we could figure something out, right? Yeah, it makes it trickier because then people start earning the start emitting the BCVX curve token as like an emission, but then they're not going to be getting that token as it sits in the tree for them, might not necessarily start earning the other emissions on top. Maybe it would, maybe it's not that hard. But yeah, then the big question is the balance of the selling. Right now we have reasonably equal selling of convex and curve, and like that balances out nicely. Where if we changed it now that we're selling more curve than we are convex, and maybe that's a little out of whack. But probably another thing is I don't know how the actual dollar values shake out with all of this. There might be an argument where it goes into the wash by being able to emit more convex than curve. But it's definitely something worth investigating. Barfer, nice. As can we implement a sort of CD ladder with the convex staking, as in 1/16 of the stake is freed up every week and withdrawals are forced to wait for the nearest week? So that's kind of what this proposal does, except it breaks away from having a set time period and say, hey, we're going to unlock this amount per week. Because if the vault's in a healthy state, we would prefer to not unlock, right? So yeah, I would encourage you when we get the model kind of put together a little better and we post in the channels, that definitely hop in and chat, because it's definitely open to different tactics for this. This just seemed to kind of be what made the most sense now and can be kind of handled more in an automated fashion, because we just need to account for the fact that, like, okay, but ideally we have a steady flow of assets into the vault and we're continually locking and locking and locking. And unlocking is a rarer event. It's just how do we use current activity to project future needs, and have that kind of go over a 16-week cycle, which in crypto is a crazy long amount of time. So it's a little tricky. Cool. Yeah, we're coming up on time here. I got about 9 more minutes. If anyone has anything else they want to touch on with Convex, I think we've touched pretty much everything. If anyone has any other topics or they want us to touch on any other products or Badger questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or hop up here. More than happy to talk about anything. I see 1 or 2 people typing in the chat, so we'll see what's coming in. We're considering spending CVX tokens for boost at all. I guess I'm not sure what you mean on that, Barfer, for spending CVX tokens for boost. If you could clarify that. Prince, welcome back. How's your bank transaction?
I'm done and just leaving Whole Foods, so you're getting to fix my now. But
nice strong day.
Still working from home, so after Labor Day, still starting about the noise. But one question I was saying is I found Badger through Convex. I'm someone who wants the whole curve, believe in the flywheel. And so one of the things that, slightly frustrated me when I moved over was the fact that to this point, the Convex Vault is selling the CVX CRV to buy more Convex. And the CX CRV Vault is selling the Convex to buy more CRV. And so kind of as a portfolio manager, I think about it, kind of should just manage the dollar values between the two. I think, and I exist in both Discords. I think if there was a flywheel strategy, you would see a lot of assets float over. And so I don't know about the technical challenges about that. Maybe you'd be emitting both strategies based on kind of, a single asset. You put in CVX and until you start getting both out, or you put in Curve until you start getting both out. But I think that would generate a lot of interest. It's also 100% partner first, given that you wouldn't be selling any of the emissions, either Curve or Convex. And, again, I think that we were talking about what would drive assets over. I think that would be a big thing. So I just wanted to like that. What you do with the free curve, could be a conversation.
Yeah. So what do you mean by a flywheel strategy? Because we're auto compounding in both of them. So I guess what do you?
Yeah, but they're in 2 different sets, right? So the way that a lot of folks think about it is if I buy CVX and I put CVX in, I then get CVX CRV. If I then stake that CVX CRV, I get more CVX CRV and more Convex, which I then just continually stake. And so you have the flywheel of by having both assets staked, you're constantly earning more of both. So right now the sets is you're earning one of the assets, but you're not getting that flywheel from Convex to CVX CRV, back to CVX, et cetera, et cetera. And so, the flywheel meme is big time in the Convex Discord, and that's why, I kind of mentioned it when, the conversation was around what would bring some of the Convex to my folks over. I think it's that, and then also I said this in the Discord, we really got to think of our UI and how we display the returns, because I can't tell you how often in the Convex Discord, people are like, why would I go pay them a fee when the ROI is less than the APR showing?
Yeah, well, and the yield thing is being fixed imminently, and there'll be some more information on that. I think on the flywheel thing, maybe we just need to figure out a meme for what Badger's doing.
I get it. Like, frankly, so the yield situation is that, like, our harvests have been getting wrecked because there have been some bad swap paths, and we're working on sorting it out, and we're going to figure out some, like, Badger emissions to compensate people but our yields have been low for the last week or two. That's true, and we're working on it. Where that comes from is a bad path selling Convex, primarily selling Curve for Convex, right? So I think Prince Talk's point is that the Convex users, like, believe in the flywheel, and they would rather actually, like, if what's being emitted is convex, get auto compounded convex. If what's being emitted is curve, get auto compounding curve, right? And then like the dollars, I would think that they would rather go to convex than curve, right? But instead of us like selling all these tokens one for another to kind of maintain the balance that like convex is emitting in, is that kind of what you're saying, Talk?
That's 100% it. If there was, and I said this early on when the helper votes existed, but this was all new. If there was one strategy, we can call it flywheel, whatever. But essentially, you'd be constantly being emitted. Staked convex, staked curve, and whatever happens to be emitted. Price. You don't care about the price, etc. I think that is the strategy folks are looking for. And from a social capital perspective, you go to Convex and say, our new vault doesn't sell any of your help. We don't sell Convex, we don't sell Curve. I know you guys are already good with them, but I think that's just another positive selling point.
Yeah, I mean, the key of it is the technical. There's a technical limitations or concerns, or I mean, like I said, everything can kind of be solved, but
because to me, like I've spent the last week dealing with like paths and harvests where we're trying to sell like tokens that have certain things like, and yeah, like actually all of this like selling of these tokens for each other is technically a pain in the ass, right? And so if we could just emit them all, that would make life a lot easier. So like, where is the technical? It's that the helpers don't auto compound as much, and instead they emit more helper tokens. Is that your concern, John?
Yeah, the concern is doing anything where it's not 100% compounding for helper vaults.
Why?
Because we are using them to distribute. I think the initial thing is, to question, can we emit? And I guess maybe we do it already. Well, I don't know. So
all we have to do is make sure
that can we balance within the tree? Yeah. Can we not unclaimed rewards? Right. Can we do emissions based on that? If we can,
then it's easy. And I don't think that's a big haul, right? So then if we can emit unclaimed on the unclaimed tokens and everything's emitting, and again, like we just switch this to like a no sell, or the only thing that we're selling is dollars, right? And then there's some parameter there of like, are the dollars going to convex or are the dollars going to curve? Or maybe the dollars just go to like auto compound. I guess they're only coming from the curve strategy, I think, but maybe anyway.
Yeah, no, and it's very minimal amounts of the dollar value is pretty small.
No, I mean this curve one, the CVX CRV has a lot of dollars, or a significant number of dollars.
Like usually, roughly 10% or so in absolute terms. Definition, give or take, is usually in dollars. So if the current APR is 60%, roughly 1 in 6 on average, I would say, is emitted in dollars. My vote would be of those dollars because they come from CVX, CVRV to be added into there. But I don't have a strong opinion on that.
I would be interested to. So I think what I'm here, like functionally, what it means is that convex holders, or at least the representative component here, want to bring their convex to a vault and then earn convex and curve, which is an interesting point. Because it comes down to like, I would be interested to see, maybe this is on the long list of analytics stuff, is assuming X whatever percent price appreciation of convex and curve, or relative price, or maybe they stay in relative, the ratio stays the same. What really is the performance difference between auto, what we're doing now, versus this quote unquote flywheel thing? Because like to me, it's just the main difference I'm hearing is that like convex holders want to also earn curve, where we're kind of we're saying, hey, what's the most fungible liquid?
I see it the most the other way around, right? Like I hold CVX. I'm much more interested in holding CVX than CRV. If you want to talk about directly, right? So our CVX CRV strategy has been selling the CVX for more CRV, right? And in the last months that the strategies existed, CVX is 4x'd and CRV is not. So to a certain extent,
you're getting more CVX. Like it's
I'm not. I'm getting less CVX than I would if I just staked my CVX CRV on curve, or on convex, because convex emits CVX and then we sell that for curve. So that portion That's what Prince Talk's talking about from a portfolio management point of view, right? There's like a trade being made there. And I can be looking at it over a few months being like my yields are down or up, but whatever, because of that trade. And that's then maybe a different thing than just trying to like auto compound your returns and optimize what's coming out without trading, which I think is more what maybe people are looking for.
But when you started this, though, you said you're a Convex holder, so that you wouldn't be in the CVX CRV vault. You'd be in the Convex vault. You'd be auto compounding back into fully into CVX, and you would have been actually.
As a Convex user in the CV, you would stake CVX, you would get curve, the locked version, you would stake that, and then the emissions on CVX CRV is a fairly healthy CVX position, while also maintaining your curve position, while also not having this issue of when am I trading one asset for the other, because as they're moving against each other, that's changing my yields. Instead, you're just saying, I want to hold both tokens. I don't really selling. They'll move how they move, but I'm constantly getting more coin. And I think that is what the flywheel is all about.
Well, my question to that though is, I mean, when you say flywheel, like I just think like ours sounds like actually more of a flywheel because you're flywheeling back into one asset over and over and over and over, and but it's in one lane versus being in two lanes. My question is, if you're coming to Badger as a Convex holder, like the perspective I'm hearing from you is like, I have just Convex, but I want to get Convex and Curve, versus like, if you're coming there, do you already have Convex and Curve? Because if you already have Convex and Curve, you continue to get more Convex and Curve with what we're doing. It's just one's in one lane, one's in the other lane.
But I think the analysis that's come out of the Convex community is that they would be better manually farming than using our vaults because the trades that we are making are not actually good, right?
But I think improve that. Like if so,
no, not because of slippage, not because of the slippage, but because like they're just not, because it's not good trades, because we're making market decisions that aren't being decided, right? And so everybody's being like, I would have been better doing nothing or making these decisions on my own than having these two separate vaults that are just randomly like buying and selling shit when they could just be feeding into each other.
Well, is that okay? Well, that I'm talking more about the spirit and the intent of the vaults, whether or not the trades we can do can actually be done more efficiently, I think is outside of this question. Obviously, if there's not a solution for doing these trades efficiently, then yes, we need to look into a better solution, because the goal is like to be the best place to bring it. I'm trying to just decipher, because I'm kind of, I'm still a little, I'm playing devil's advocate here for like how, if you're coming in, like, do you already have Convex and Curve? If you already have Convex and Curve, then you should, it actually seems better to me to have them be separate, because then you can manually adjust your ratios however you want, and you're not just like putting it out to chance of being like, well, I'm going to put it in here, and then whatever Convex and whatever Curve I get, it's fine.
To that point, there's withdrawal fees, there's the management fee. I'm just, I won't belabor the point, and I'll let you, and I'll drop back down. But my final point is, I'll say is, having someone who lives in both Discords, people love CVX because you have voting rights on CRV or CVX CRV. They love Curve because it's a claim on transaction fees. And so they want both. And the reason people love Convex is that you can start to build a position in both, no matter which side you begin your staking journey on. And so a vault that just automated that process, Convex just added to their UI a couple weeks ago the stake and reclaim button, and people were euphoric about that. You keep the you keep the 3 curve, but it basically, you can claim from all of your pools, all of the CVX, all of the CRV, and just automatically restake it. That is what people want. They don't want to be selling CVX to buy more curve in the vault. They don't want to be selling curve to buy more CVX, because as Tritium is saying, that is a market decision that you make randomly. And when the assets move against each other, what they'll see is the ROI, and they'll be like, what the heck happened? What they do love is the fact that I can just continue to build both of my positions, no matter what side I start on. If you love Convex, you love Curve, and pretty much vice versa.
And so one strategy that you said, no matter what asset you start on, will continue this flywheel and build you positions in both. I'm telling you, the people will love it. I personally will love it. I don't want to speak for everyone, but that is my read from being in both Discords.
All right. Well, very much appreciate the insight there, and I think the takeaway is we're reevaluating obviously the strategy period because these trading issues, and as we're doing that, I think what we need to do is think seriously about this alternative, but then also if we think that what we're doing is still the better solution, we need to be better with education and get feedback on it. And let's, like Tritium said, let's get some data and see is what we're doing worse based on the data? Is it better or equal? And then if it's equal, is it much easier for us to do technically and give us more flexibility? If so, then we just need to come out and share that and say, hey, here's the info, here's the data. I don't know, what it is, and people can have their intentions, and if we can say, hey, this flywheel thing, what we're doing is better, or you can get the same effect by starting with XYZ, we should just share that and we can own that. I think the takeaway is definitely we'll take that into account as we're kind of reevaluating these vaults. Sweet. Okay, well, we're over time. Gonna close it down. We can continue the chat in the office hours discussion channel if you want in there. Got pull it up. I thought we talked about this enough. We might trigger them into coming on stage and actually talking if we keep talking about not auto compounding the vaults, but not yet. Maybe next time. Tritium, anything else you want to share?
Nope, I'm good. See you guys. Cool. It was a nice conversation.
Yeah, thanks everyone for hopping on. Appreciate it. Thanks, Will, for setting it up.
See you in a couple of weeks.
Hit up Tom's for your PO app.
Yes. And enter the wrath.